Now, thousands of people are waking up without power after Storm Gerrit brought heavy snow, rain and 80-mile-per-hour winds to parts of the country, particularly Scotland. South Yorkshire Police have launched a murder investigation after a 46-year-old man died when a car hit a crowd of people in Sheffield. Sky News has been shown what Israel says is the largest Hamas tunnel as thousands of people flee the expanding IDF ground offensive in Gaza. Scientists say a new winter vaccine for babies could significantly cut hospital admissions and ease pressure on the NHS. Now, all of those stories we will cover. With the morning newspaper review with me here for that are the journalists Harry Phipps and Janelle Aldred. A very good morning to you both. Thanks for joining us. So let's start, Harry, with the first story, which is on the weather. We just mentioned it there in the headlines, and unsurprisingly hits a lot of the front pages. And you've picked out that the Telegraph travellers told to delay plans amid storm and rail chaos.
Yes, I just hope that it's calmed down a bit for New Year's Eve would be a bit of a blow and people are struggling to get out and about. Christmas Day, the weather was rather dull, wasn't it? Rather mild, not very Christmassy, but now we're having a blast. I think it's hitting Scotland particularly badly. And the Telegraph suggests it's also a bit of a double whammy because there also a lot of trains aren't running because of staff shortages and either people phoning in sick or the problem with train drivers not being obliged to work weekends. So the lack of flexible rostering, meaning that there are lots of trains are cancelled. So that does sound a bit miserable for quite a lot of people.
And we just hope everyone's putting safety first, and if that means they have to take an extra day off work, so be it. I didn't hear that from me, but great that you guys haven't and you're both here in person. Janelle, if we go on to the second story, Mirror front page. So again, this is hit tons of the front pages, but linked to the broader point about the budget date, which was announced, and the Mirror going on this ongoing suggestion that inheritance tax cuts will be part of that.
Yeah, and I mean, you can see why it might be popular for some Tories, you know, talking about uplifting from £325,000 to £500,000 the inheritance tax. So what the Mirror are saying is basically this only benefits 1% of people. 90% of people will not benefit from this uplift, meaning it will affect mainly people who already have enough money. I mean, I feel conflicted about this. You know, if you buy a house and you want to leave it to your children, you would want to do that without a certain exception of paying a tax on it. You know, you've worked hard, you've paid tax already and all of that. However, you do see the other side, whereas this is going to cost the Treasury £7 to £9 billion in terms of a shortfall at a time when the government doesn't seem to have a whole ton of money and they're spending a lot of it on lots of things. So you can see both sides of what someone is saying about actually why are we doing this for a percentage of people who possibly don't need this extra money, whereas a tax cuts for people who are on lower incomes, who don't have expensive houses to leave to their children. What does this mean for them? And so I think from that perspective, in a time when the cost of living crisis cuts most deeply to those who don't have, you can see the argument about why this might not be popular. Plus, if we think about the Red Wall, a lot of people in those territories are not going to have £500,000, £600,000 houses who were newly voting for the Conservatives the last election. So I don't know whether this will be the popular thing that they will transform their future.
On the other hand, Harry, the Mail takes the other side.
Yes, not surprisingly, the Daily Mail is a bit more positive about the idea than the Mirror. They're suggesting, though, that rather than abolition of inheritance tax, that it might be halved. It might be cut in some way with the rate or the threshold raised. I think that actually it's something that a lot of people dislike the idea of, inheritance tax, a death tax. It's unfair because people have already paid tax on their income and they're wanting to pass something on to their children, and even people who aren't affected by it, who might generally think, well, let's tax the rich, is normally a popular idea. They feel this is a pretty unpleasant tax. Also, there's an obvious point, of course, that the rich are, in this case, are dead. So the people who are hit by it are the people they leave money to. So they might not be that rich. The sons or daughters, nephews, nieces, godchildren, you know, Battersea Dogs Home, whatever. I mean, the rich don't, the millionaires don't need to bother about it because they're dead. What they wanting to do was to pass something on to others. So I think that this would actually be popular, not just among the people who find themselves caught in this, and obviously in London, for example, you you find you bought a house a few years ago and you find you sort of accidentally become a millionaire and caught up in it quite often. So I think it would be quite a popular move.
It certainly, though, would have less positive short-term effect on the economy, which reportedly is obviously the aim for a lot of these things. So another factor to consider. Just sticking on this topic more broadly, Janelle, what we haven't touched on is the date of the budget, March the 6th. And that's earlier than some had suggested, after a sort of medium to late autumn statement, and of course raises the big question of whether it influences the likelihood of the election date. And a lot of column inches spent on that this morning too.
Yeah, I mean, I was one of the naysayers, like there is no way they're going to call like a spring election. It's going to be in the autumn, give them more time to get themselves together. However, the date of the budget does make it seem as though there could be an election in the spring. But of course, again, all of these things are kind of speculation. We're kind of living it before the event. So we're now speculating about all the possible outcomes there might be, when in reality, I think what might also affect their decision is how a lot of these budget, actually how it lands, whether or not actually it makes them more popular or less, because I think that will probably come into the equation as well.
To your point about speculation, we did this before the autumn statement on inheritance tax itself, and of course it didn't even feature, so maybe it won't feature again. But again, on the date, Harry, I mean, the budget itself likely to be a critical swing factor for the Conservatives ahead of the election, whatever the date is.
Yeah, there are the two things they need to do. One is to have some bold, strong tax cuts. I think abolition of inheritance tax, would sound as though that would be the most prominent. And the other thing, of course, is to get the Rwanda flights off if they can. I mean, I think because of both of those, I'd be surprised if there was an early election. I don't think there's huge significance in the date of the budget being sort of early March rather than mid-March. I think people are possibly reading too much into that. I think it's more likely that Rishi Sunak's going to want to have it as late as he can, so he can at least try and get time to deliver on all these promises that he's been making.
Let's move on to the next story. Janelle, you've gone for something in The Guardian. Domestic abuse survivors have lost trust in us.
Yeah, the Deputy Superintendent Andy Wadey, the Metropolitan Police's lead for domestic abuse and stalking, he's acknowledged that a lot of women and girls do feel badly let down by the Met and don't trust them. Policing is always done by consent, but people consent when there's trust. And I think with what's been going on, especially in the news, Wayne Couzens and David Carrick, and the well-known stories about them kind of going through the police force to find the police that themselves have been either charged or accused or convicted of domestic violence still within their ranks, well, that doesn't give you confidence if you're going through it. You can actually give them a call and that something will be done. They say there's been at least 6 suicides where there was a history of domestic abuse that wasn't dealt with. And so there is a massive issue. He says they've got to publicly go through a process where they root out these police officers, and that's what they're trying to do. But I think shifting perception is what takes a long time. Mm-hmm. So it will have to be a very public and thorough and quick. It can't just be an ongoing thing that we're doing for ages and ages. People have to know when they call the police they're going to get help.
It's interesting, this one, Harry, because clearly the Met and the police as a whole have been in focus on many issues for quite some time. There needs to be these investigations and reviews, but there are endless investigations and reviews at the same time.
I'm afraid there'll be a lot of scepticism, I would suspect, about saying yes, we'll have another review, another investigation. And of course, the Metropolitan Police have had a whole series of problems. I mean, we had another story the other day about knife crime getting even worse. So I'm afraid it's pretty grim. They say lost trust in the Met. I think a lot of people lost trust quite a while ago.
So a fun one to end this section on. We've gone for, Harry, in the Daily Express, vinyl revival inspired by Taylor Swift.
And I'm an old-fashioned guy, very keen on all the kind of tradition, nostalgia, and I think this is welcome news. I somehow think that the music is, because it's so widely available now, isn't it? With Spotify, the internet, and everything there. To have something, have it on vinyl, it makes it a focus. So something you're going to pay attention to it more rather than just being something that's on in the background. So I think it's welcome.
Well, there we go. I mean, if you have a vinyl player, which is not as unheard of as perhaps a decade or two ago, producers tell me in the Go On. The one thing it does also mean is you play an album from start to finish rather than the generic playlist of greatest hits from whichever artist you might pick.
As anyone who's got a vinyl knows, you can't just pick up the flip and put it down on the next song. There's no such thing. You kind of have to let it do its course. But they say sales have been going up for the past 16 years. I think we all love retro. We all love the things that remind us of when we were young. We had a record player in our house. We used to listen to songs on it. There's a great sound when it hits the vinyl, and it just sounds so much richer and a lot more fun. I don't have a record player, don't have enough space, but if I did, I probably would get one.
There we go. Very nice one to end it on, and looking forward to the next papers discussion in about an hour's time. Harry and Janelle, for now, thanks so much.
Thanks.